Welcome to the Strength for Life podcast, where smart strength training meets real life. We're Dr. Matt and Nicole, founders of Village Fitness and Physical Therapy. Here, you'll learn what really works in the gym, at home, and for life.
Welcome back to the Strength for Life podcast. Today, we are going to talk about holes in your bones.
Holes in your bones, huh?
Yes, that is correct. I know it's as bad as it sounds. It really is.
And of course, what we mean by holes in our bones is osteoporosis and osteopenia, which we get asked about pretty frequently as a physical therapist and a personal trainer.
Yeah, and most of our clients are in the demographic of starting to see osteopenia or osteoporosis. And so, we talk to our clients about it probably on a weekly basis.
And what our clients are asking about is, should I be concerned about my bone density, number one? And number two, can I do something about it? Can I strength train or take a supplement or eat a food that can help me to bolster my bone density? And we're going to talk about the answer to that question today. In fact, we're going to talk about how our bones work. We're going to talk about osteopenia and osteoporosis. We'll get into nutritional strategies to fortify your bones and the best research-backed types of exercise to build strong, resilient bones.
Yeah. So first off, how many bones are in the human body?
You tell us. I know the answer because we looked it up right before this podcast.
Well, what was your answer? What was your guess?
Didn't I say 208?
Yeah, and I said 212. I thought it was a multiple of 6, but it's 206. 206.
Funny story. When I was in undergrad, we had this really cool anatomy class, and you had to do a trivia at the end of the class as part of the grade. I think you got like extra credit for it. And the final question on the trivia was, how many bones are in the human body?
And did you get it correct?
No,
okay.
I didn't.
Okay.
I still probably thought it was 208. It's 206. Very important.
Yeah. So our bones are obviously the structural support system for our bodies. And without them, we would really just be a puddle. So if you think about you need support in your body and for everything to function. And so that's like the first and foremost, like why we have bones. Secondly, a lot of people think about their bones when they get older, but they don't necessarily think about their bones when they're young. And so the only time that I would say people start to think about their bones when they're younger is if they break a bone. And so, I think a lot of times like the bone health really doesn't get discussed until it's actually a problem when people are older and they already start to have osteopenia or osteoporosis. But really, it's important to talk about bone health and holes in your bone, before you get to that point, because there's a lot that you can do about it before that point. And so, do you want to talk about when we were younger, the amount of kids that used to be in casts compared to now?
It's nuts.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a really funny comedian that talks about this. In fact, we'll play that clip for you right now because it's worth hearing.
When's the last time you saw a kid with a cast on? Remember? There used to be kids with casts everywhere. I used to walk into third grade. It was like a VA hospital. Just leg up in the air, eye patch. Like, whoa, what happened to you, No casts anymore. Now all the injuries are psychological that they get online. That's not as fun, No one can autograph your crippling anxiety.
Okay, I hope you guys enjoyed that as much as we do.
It's so good. But it's true. So like now, it's
goodness.
so rare for us to see a kid in a cast anymore. Like,
oh yeah.
I think we've only known a few people who have, that have had kids that have broken bones. Whereas like it used to be everyone broke a bone. I broke a bone when I was a kid. I actually fell off a slide. I was like 2 or 3 and broke my arm. And so it was just like common thing. And everyone signed your cast. And it was like every week someone came into class with a cast on. And now it's like, I don't think our kids have really seen that outside of maybe like 1 or 2 kids ever.
Yeah.
So
And I think the thing is parents are very concerned these days about their children breaking bones when the reality is what we should probably be more concerned about is our kids not getting enough activity and not doing the jumping off the trees and the throwing the rocks and all the things that kids do that actually build stronger bones. I know our 7-year-old girl is like constantly upside down and falling. She does just been practicing somersaults for gymnastics and like backhand
Back handsprings.
Handsprings.
Yeah.
And I'm all for it because I know that every time she does that, even when she hits the ground, it's like she's building stronger, denser bones that are going to stick with her for the rest of her life. And it's a pretty critical period for kids as they go through, young adult youth to build up stronger, denser bones. Now, most people think of bones as structural support, kind of like beams in a building that don't really communicate with anything else.
But the thing is that these walls can actually talk.
Yeah. So growing up, my mom would sometimes call me a bonehead when I was being
understandably
an idiot. Turns out I'm still a bonehead sometimes. My wife can attest. And our bones are actually connected to our brain through something called the bone-brain axis. And when they're healthy, they release this amazing hormone called osteoclastin, which can stimulate the production of BDNF, brain-derived neurotropic factor. And BDNF, if you read about Alzheimer's or brain health these days, you'll see BDNF. It's like the goal is to increase BDNF because that turns down the production, or it helps us to not get Alzheimer's. It keeps our brain healthy. It slows the degradation of brain tissue. And the healthier your bones are, the more BDNF you release to protect your brain from decay.
So osteoclastin also helps with your blood sugar control. And so why is that important? Well, a lot of people are concerned about their blood sugar and a lot of chronic diseases like diabetes, which are very preventable. And so osteoclastin, when it works well, it essentially like taps on the pancreas and it says, release insulin, which is good because you want your body to be insulin sensitive. That helps the blood sugar to remain stable and not get too high or stay elevated for too long. The other thing it does is the osteoclastin tells your muscles, essentially it's time to pull sugar out of the blood and use it for energy in the muscles. And so that's a good thing. We don't want our blood sugar to be high. We also don't want it to be too low. It's really important. Your body functions, when your blood sugar is in a very small range. And so if it's outside of that range, either way too high or way too low, that's when problems really start to arise in the rest of the body.
And specifically in men, osteoclastin stimulates testosterone production. So things like strength, vitality, energy, muscle can be built when you have healthy bones, or be built better when you have healthy bones. So we wanted to make it really clear for those listening that bones do much more than just hold us up, and we should be thinking about bones and our bone health much before we get osteoporosis or osteopenia or anything like that.
Yeah. So as kids, like our bodies, like we were talking about earlier, like they're really busy making bone. And so it's good for kids and adults to jump and to have force. We want like our bones to have tensile strength. And the more that there is impact and forces exerted on that structure, the stronger the bone will get and adapt to that. And so that's why, kids just naturally do this. They like walk on the side of a sidewalk curb, and then they like to jump off things. Like I don't know about you, but I feel like everywhere we go, if there's like some type of ledge for kids to jump off, our kids say things like, can I jump off this? Can you catch me? And
kids are really good at knowing when something is too high. And I think if we don't let our kids figure that out a little bit and take risks, they don't develop that judgment that they need to know how to take smart risks as they get older. And if they never develop the ability to take intelligent risks, they're going to live a pretty miserable, kind of sheltered life, because the world it's risk. Like life is risk. And those that are successful in life are able to take risks that pay off, and usually smart risks are more likely to pay off than dumb ones.
Yeah. So, you're building bone as kids, and I think that's even, changed with the nutrition of kids, but we won't get into that too much today. But you peak basically in like your bone mass and building up your bone at around age 25. It gets more of a range of 20 to 25, and it differs between male and female. But that after that, then the goal is just maintenance. So, once you're past that phase, which most of us listening to this probably are, and then around age 35, we can lose up to 5% of our bone density or our mass per decade, which is really scary.
It is. And every 3 seconds, somewhere in the world, a bone breaks, and usually not from a car accident or a fall off a ladder, but typically from osteoporosis, just normal everyday life, people with osteoporosis, their bones are so weak that just stepping off a curb can sometimes lead to a fracture. And that's 8.9 million fractures every single year. And
go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, falls are the leading cause of accidental death in Americans over the age of 65, more than car accidents or anything else. And that doesn't even take into account the people that die from fall-related complications in the years after. Didn't you were telling me some stat when we were prepping for this about how, like, what your percentage chances of dying if you break your hip in the next year?
Yeah, I don't remember exactly. It was somewhere in the like 30 to 40%. Though, like, if you break your hip, your like likelihood of dying in the next year is like 30 to 40%. So falls are like the thing that's like I hate to say this, but it's like the beginning of the end. So like when you fall and break your femur, it really is like the beginning of the end. And the likelihood, even if you do recovery, so you don't die in that year, is your quality of life and your independence and just like what you can do after that, like drastically decreases. And so we've heard story after story of people who have said like, oh, you know, my mom fell, and after that, you know, she went into rehab for 6 months, and like she never went back to her house.
Yeah.
She just like went into assisted living and never really regained the ability to be mobile and independent. And you know, really, especially too, because a lot of times they're like in bed for a long time. So we're gonna get into like what bed rest does to our bones specifically today. But it's horrible. Like, it's absolutely horrible. I think it's like what most people would say is like one of their worst nightmares of just like the slow, painful, preventable death, which is really sad.
Yeah, it is really sad.
So I think we should get into like what exactly is osteopenia and osteoporosis. And so osteopenia, osteoporosis, one, you know, comes before the other. And it's just the weakening of the bones. They become more porous. And I like to use the analogy of like osteopenia is like prediabetes. And so it's like the warning signs that there's already issues. So like when you have prediabetes, like there has already been issues in your blood sugar regulation and your body's ability to produce insulin or its insulin sensitivity for probably about a decade before you actually get full-blown diabetes. And so while, you know, that's not good, it is a warning sign that there's trouble ahead and like severe trouble. And so if you know, have been diagnosed with osteopenia, it's like, start taking action today. You obviously don't want to get to the point where you have full-blown osteoporosis, but essentially osteopenia is like the holes have started to develop. And then by osteoporosis, it's like you look at a picture or, you know, an x-ray of a bone, a femur bone, and it's like it just literally has holes in it, which, you know, nobody wants that.
Yeah.
That can't be good for us.
And we can't see inside of our bodies to know that with the naked eye. So medical practitioners use something called the DEXA scan to assess for bone density. And they compare it to the bone density of the average 30-something, and we consider that to be normal. And anybody with a T-score of -1, meaning you're one standard deviation below a normal average 30-year-old, is the beginning of osteopenia. If you get below 2.5, or a -2.5, meaning you're 2.5 standard deviations below somebody with normal bone density, that's full-blown osteoporosis. Now, we are actually going to start looking into a company called Body Spec, which does pop-up bone density scans. We're going to try and bring them to Village to do like bone density scan for our clients and just let our clients sign up to get scanned, because I think it's really important to know, where do I stand currently, where's my bone density, even if you're relatively young. Dr. Justin, one of our PTs, he told me, or he told you, he's actually getting a scan with Body Spec later this week, which is really cool, to just know, how am I doing, how's my bone density.
Well, and then I think it also serves as a baseline. Like the more information you have now, like the more you can see how your body changes over time. And so just like if you're measuring it, you're going to have more of a pulse on it, and you're probably going to pay more attention to it. So just like sleep and diet and all those things. Like if you know, what you don't know, you can't change, but what you do know, like you can take action on. And so I think, you know, getting a DEXA scan, and it's incredible. Like as I was looking into this, I was like, wow, this is amazing. Like you used to have to get a referral from your doctor, and if you weren't 65 or you hadn't had a fracture, like you couldn't get a DEXA scan. And now it's like, wow, they will drive to you, and it takes 15 minutes.
And it's less than $100.
Yeah, it's less than $100. So it's like very affordable. I think everyone should get one to have a baseline, and then probably get one every like year or two, just to have a pulse on that, because it is so vital for our health.
Yeah. So one of the biggest drivers behind what causes osteopenia or osteoporosis is genetics. So your genetics are going to be responsible for 70% of whether or not you have osteoporosis or not. However, there's still a lot of things that you can do to accelerate osteoporosis or to decelerate it and even reverse it, which we'll get into next. But one of the things that accelerates osteoporosis, or a few of the things, are inactivity, meaning you're just not moving your body often, smoking, and drinking. Anything more than 2 drinks per day, which is a lot. That's like 14 drinks per week. So, well, I guess it doesn't necessarily have to be every day, but the research shows anything more than 2 drinks per day leads to a really significant increase in your risk of osteoporosis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and women naturally usually don't build quite as much bone as men. That's because they start puberty a little bit earlier than men. They also just have smaller frames and bones. And then as they get older too, then they typically, once they go through menopause, there's like an acceleration in osteoporosis or osteopenia. And that's really due to a decrease in estrogen. And so one of the things that I have been reading about and researching a lot recently is hormone replacement therapy. And so I think that it's like all of the research shows that so far that resistance training, like heavy resistance training combined with hormone replacement therapy, is like the best thing that you can do for your bones and your muscles. And as you age, and women that are doing that feel incredible and have seen incredible results and don't see a decrease in bone density, and also they see an increase in muscle mass and bone density. So I'm not saying start taking hormone replacement therapy or start doing that.
Because you don't do that.
Because I don't do that, yeah.
Be clear.
And so,
but
and
you're
I think,
also 35.
Exactly. And so I think that's something that I will explore as I get closer to perimenopause, menopause. And I definitely, we're really big on, we wouldn't recommend things that we wouldn't do ourselves.
Which you
or
just did.
haven't done. Yeah. But what I'm saying is I would explore it, as I will be doing the same, as I get closer to menopause. And I think it's one of those things
Can't
where
wait.
it's like, I know, right?
Can't wait.
I
It'll be
bet.
so much fun.
And the reason for that is because your hormones are so specific to you. And I think, measuring them, finding someone who's going to work with you specifically and not just like start taking estrogen, but finding someone who can, get a baseline of where you're at, whether you've gone through menopause or not, and then work with you to make sure that your hormones are at the level that they need to be, really could optimize your health and make you feel significantly better. So it's worth exploring. It's worth finding a physician who would work with you individually. And again, I wouldn't say start doing it. I would say consult with a physician who works with women and hormones, and see if that could be a resource to you.
Love it. Cool. Let's get into nutritional strategies to fortify and strengthen bones. And then we're going to spend time talking about exercise strategies to strengthen and fortify bones. And the really big picture when it comes to nutrition, I think, is that you need to make sure that you're eating enough nutritionally dense food, and we'll talk specifically about what that means, but enough nutritionally dense food that your body doesn't feel the need to pull from your bones for nutrients, because our bones are this storehouse of different nutrients, things like calcium and phosphorus. And if you're not getting enough from your diet or from supplements, your body will actually pull from your bones to provide that. And I guess you could kind of think of it like the bank. It's like you could go to the bank and withdraw money, or you can deposit money. Kind of the same thing with our bones. We can go and deposit calcium and magnesium into our bones when we have a diet rich in those things, or we can withdraw if our diet doesn't contain those things.
You know what's super interesting too is that, like, for women specifically in pregnancy and postpartum, like a lot of times women don't eat enough like high quality food and get enough nutrients. And then with breastfeeding, they're actually expending even more energy producing breast milk. And so because of that, their body gets really depleted in nutrients, specifically in their bones. And so there's unfortunately like that's not really, they don't really talk about bone health postpartum. A lot of times they'll, make sure that like, you and baby are healthy, but they don't really go deep into like, well, what are your bones like after you just, delivered or grew a child for 9 months, delivered, and then breastfed for a year or 2 years. And so I think it's not even just
a lot of
important for women.
withdrawals happening there.
Yeah. So I think it's really important for women, if you are pregnant or you're breastfeeding or you're postpartum, to really consider that. Like it's hard as a mom to get enough high quality food, especially in like the early days when you're just, trying to survive. And so you're probably depleted. And so you really should, get a DEXA scan and probably start, making sure that you either change your diet, but also consider adding in some supplements, which we're going to get into, because you're probably even more depleted than you realized, even if you're on the younger end and you haven't gone through like post-menopause.
Nice. So just nutrients in general, eating fresh fruits and vegetables are crucial to making sure that you're getting enough nutrients. You want to eat a variety of them, especially if they're in season, because in season fruits and vegetables are going to have more nutrients than those that are, picked in a different country 6 months before they get to you, and then either artificially ripened or artificially preserved with different gases. Those, as a general rule of thumb, nutrients tend to decay over time after a fruit or vegetable has been picked, and they don't taste as good. So
they taste like cardboard sometimes. It's just like flavorless, and they might look okay, but they're probably, if they don't taste good, like they probably don't have as many nutrients. Like there's stark contrast between farmers market or homegrown and the store. Like we will
now,
often.
I was going to ask, is there a big price difference between carrots at the farmer's market and carrots at the store? Now I understand. So we buy Harry's berries every week and they are $14 per carton. If you go to Erewhon though, they are $28. Same thing. So they're a bargain.
But you don't have to get up and be at the farmer's market at 8 a.m. on a Saturday.
Anyways, I don't let Nicole shop at Erewhon.
It's true.
Because I got bills to pay.
No, but I will say that.
But I was going to ask, are most vegetables, other than the strawberries, are they similarly priced at the farmer's market compared to the grocery store for organic vegetables?
Yes. And in fact, I think that a lot of times they're even cheaper. Like people have this misconception, I think, and this might be true outside of California. So I don't want to speak
If you buy salmon at the farmer's market, insanely expensive comparatively to salmon in the store.
Well, it's just not even the same quality. Like it's not,
for sure.
It's not
you could
apples
argue
to
quality,
apples.
but I'm saying
like price-wise.
Vegetables, like the carrots at the farmer's market are not like the carrots at the grocery store. It's not apples to apples.
No.
Yeah, they're still similarly priced.
Yeah. So I was going to say, a bunch of beautifully imperfect carrots from the farmer's market is like $2 to $2.50. So it depends on like the size of the bunch. And at the store, often $2 to $3, and it's a smaller bunch. Often they've had the tops cut off because they're not as fresh. I know, because it's not fresh anymore, and so they have to cut it off. And they'll just put them in the bags, or they'll make them into little mini carrots to help extend the shelf life, which just means less nutrients. And like you have a carrot from the farmer's market, it's like flavorful, it's crunchy, it's delicious. Like our kids love them. You get the carrots from the store and it literally doesn't even taste like anything.
Yeah.
It's horrible. Same thing with lettuce. Like I'm always amazed. So at the farmer's market, we get this huge head of red leaf lettuce. It's like, it's just massive. Like it barely fits in the produce bag. And that is $2 or sometimes $2.50, depending on season, time of year. So like $2 to $2.50. You go get that same red leaf lettuce and it's like maybe a quarter to a third of the size, and it's like $4 to $5 for that same. So it's actually more expensive for something. So I do think people think like, oh, farmer's market, it's so expensive. And I'm like, it's actually cheaper because you're buying things that are in season. They're going to have more nutrients, more flavor, and they're just going to be, and it's also better for the environment because you're eating things that are grown locally, not across, seas or the borders. It's just like, it's a win for everyone. The only downside is if you can't get to the farmer's market on a Saturday morning, which is a major bummer. Like the weeks that we I can't go on a Saturday morning to the farmer's market. It's always so sad because we get our produce just at the store and I'm like, this just isn't the same.
It's not. If you want to go deeper on that, there's a great book called Eating on the Wild Side. We'll have Jamila pop it into the show notes.
And Animal Vegetable Miracle. That's also another really, really good one.
That one. But Eating on the Wild Side talks specifically about which vegetables should be eaten fresh compared to some fruits, if I'm remembering correctly, actually increase in certain nutrients when they're frozen or canned.
Yeah.
Most, though, like I
tomatoes.
said, as a general rule of thumb, most vegetables, the fresher you eat them, the sooner you eat them after they are picked, the more nutritious they're going to be. So the next thing with nutrition is eating meat on the bone and bone broth. And so when we eat meat on the bone, when we cook meat with bone in, so like a bone in ribeye or a whole chicken, the minerals and the nutrients in the bone get into the meat that we end up eating, and it has a lot more nutrients. And I haven't seen any really tight research on eating certain parts of an animal to help strengthen that part of you. Like eating liver doesn't necessarily strengthen your liver, even though that's like the ancient wisdom is that you eat parts of the animal to strengthen those parts of you. Like you eat brain to strengthen your brain. And it doesn't appear that there's a lot of specificity to that. However, bones and organ meats are incredibly nutritious. And one of the ways that we get organ meats in, which I didn't even mention, organ meats, that would be another one there, bone broth, meat on the bone, organ meats, is by eating ancestral blend ground beef. So ground beef that's not just the actual, beef, but also has some liver and heart blended into it. You really can't taste it. Our kids don't even know. So do not tell my kids about this, please. My kids are eating ancestral meatballs.
Chloe might like it. She likes things that are healthy.
She's weird.
Yeah, she's like, is this healthy for me? Okay, I'll eat it.
Yeah.
So
that's your daughter.
Yeah.
Anyway, so meat on the bone, bone broth, organ meats. A way to get that in is with ancestral blend ground beef, which can we link that into? Jamila eats her ancestral blend meatballs just about every day. She's behind the mic, not behind the mic, behind the camera.
Yeah.
Anyways, however, most folks do not get enough nutrients in their diet. The standard American diet is void of nutrients. So,
and they're really just focused on presentation. Like I think there's such a emphasis on like perfect looking produce and things that look a specific way. And they're so concerned about the packaging and all of these things that like make it more appealing for people to buy. And of course people want to buy things that look good, but the imperfections a lot of times means like it probably was grown without a lot of modifications because, plants do their own thing. Like when if you look, I know when you eat food like from your garden, it's like, some of it's going to have holes in it and some of it's going to be a little, misshapen. And so really probably the things that are most nutritious, and a lot of the produce we buy from the farmer's market, like it's not the prettiest produce, but it tastes incredible. Yeah. And it's a lot more nutritious and better for us. So
cool. So I was going to say, most folks don't get enough nutrients. And when it comes to bone health, there's really 4 nutrients that are really important that you can supplement with. And we'll actually link into the show notes the first 3. I don't have a link for fiber, which is the 4th one. You
just got to get that from your food.
But you can supplement with fiber.
You can.
Yeah. So number 1 is calcium. And what a lot of people understand naturally is that calcium strengthens bones. I hear consistently from people that I probably need to eat more calcium. You probably do. You probably need more calcium in your diet if you're not getting enough from things like milk, yogurt, kefir, other dairy products. So dairy products are much more, the calcium in dairy products is much more bioavailable, meaning it will get absorbed into your body than, say, the calcium from leafy greens like spinach. Even if they have the same amount of calcium in them, the calcium you'll get from the dairy products will be much more easily absorbed into your body. And if you're not getting enough, supplement with calcium, which again, we'll throw that in the show notes.
Next up would be vitamin D. So without vitamin D, you don't absorb as much calcium. So you only absorb about 10 to 15% of the calcium if you don't have enough vitamin D. And a lot of people are deficient. One, I think people are scared of the sun now. And so don't go outside, because that's like the best way that you can get vitamin D is through sun exposure, and specifically on like your abdomen and your thighs. So, if you don't live in Southern California and you don't go sunbathing in the middle of the day, you're probably not getting enough vitamin D.
I mean, you could go out in the sun in the morning.
You could, yeah.
I was riding.
But 10 to 2 is like optimal for vitamin D.
Oh, is it? Okay. I was riding my bike home Sunday morning after my Sunday morning bike ride, and there's this guy. He's probably 70 years old, just standing outside of his house, smoking a cigarette, bathing in the sun. Like he was intentionally standing with his face pointed towards the sun, eyes closed. I was like, wow, what a picture of doing something terrible and something good at the same time. I wonder if it's kind of counteracting. Probably not.
So what does vitamin D do? It acts like a hormone, and it helps with our bone building. And then it also helps with bone breaking down. So our osteoblasts help with bone building, and osteoclasts are the ones that help break down. And you need both, but you want them to be balanced. You don't want you don't want your osteoclast to, increase too much or be working on overtime, because then your bone density decreases. So like I said before, sunlight is the best thing, fatty fish. There are foods that are fortified with vitamin D. Unfortunately, a lot of times those are things that are not very healthy for you, and then they put vitamin D on the front. But if you have some vitamin D in fortified foods, great. And then the last one would probably be a supplement. And so, want to talk about that one?
Yeah, the 3 supplements we'll link in from a company called Momentous, which we've been recommending to clients a lot recently. We started recommending their creatine, and they just put out high quality supplements that we feel confident recommending to people. The vitamin D one they have is 2,000 IUs, which is more than the minimum that people need. So people up to 70 need 600 IUs. People over 70 need 800 minimum. So if you're taking a vitamin D supplement that's 2,000 IUs, which is what this one is, you're definitely going to check the box. Any extra will just, leave through urine.
Next up is protein.
Protein.
Our favorite topic.
Yep.
So protein makes up about half of your bone volume and about a third of your bone mass. It helps to support our muscle, obviously, which strengthens bones through pulling forces. And you can get it through fermented dairy, which is great. We love it. We love our kefir. And you can obviously get it through anything that has high in protein. So mostly meat sources are where we would get most of our protein from, like we talked about earlier, the meat that we eat in the grass-fed meatballs.
And we have a whole podcast
on protein
that we did on protein where we talked.
Listen to that, yeah.
And I think the too long didn't listen version of that podcast is minimum 100 grams a day.
Yep.
But probably
more.
Yeah.
But if you're not there, just start by increasing more until, because it can be hard for people. I found when I started increasing my protein, it was way harder at the beginning because I was like, man, I just get full really quickly. But as I've adjusted and had a lot more protein as kind of the center of every meal, your body does adjust, but just aim to get more. But I would say measure it, because a lot of people think that they're getting enough protein and they're actually not.
Yeah. And there's a study that just came out on protein last month showing that we probably don't absorb as much protein as we are eating. And so we may need even more protein than originally thought to, achieve the muscle protein synthesis and the bone benefits that we're after. And the final one is fiber and gut health. So we talked about the bone-brain axis. There's also a gut-bone axis. And if our gut does not have what it needs to be healthy, fiber is a big part of gut health. It helps with motility and bacterial count. If we don't have that, our bone is going to try to support the gut, and it's going to offload nutrients to make that happen. So diets rich in fruits and vegetables, high in fiber, like the Mediterranean diet, have been linked with fewer fractures in folks that follow those diets compared to the traditional Western diet of processed grains, seed oils, and sugar leads to more fractures. So no surprises there. I'm sure you could have guessed that.
Yeah, so I would say the takeaway is that strong bones They need more than just, calcium pills. However, if you're not getting enough calcium in your diet, definitely consider supplementing with it. But you really need to think about like your bone health from a nutrition standpoint as just like it has to be a huge part and staple in your diet. So getting enough calcium, vitamin D, protein, and plenty of plants and fiber, and all of that together will help to not just with your bones, but also with your gut and just your overall body health and cellular metabolism in general. And so it needs to be a more holistic approach. However, if there are deficiencies, which if you don't know if you have those deficiencies, I'd recommend getting a blood test to kind of know like where your baseline was. I was a little deficient in vitamin D, and I didn't know that. And so I started supplementing with vitamin D.
Have you gotten retested since?
I haven't. No, I need to.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I would just say get a baseline, know where you're at. If you don't know where you're at and you don't have the ability or it's too complicated to go get, starting blood work, then just start doing some of these things we talked about, eating high quality foods and protein, and maybe just consider adding in like a vitamin D supplement because chances are you're probably deficient.
Cool. Let's get into my favorite topic, exercise that builds strong and resilient bones. And this is kind of our area of expertise. Not kind of, it is. It is our area of expertise. Our training comes in exercise, so we have a lot to say. Now, the number one influence on bone density, like we talked about earlier, is genetics. So 70% of the variability in your bone density will come from your genes, but lifestyle habits play a massive role in that. In fact, if you look at tennis players, and you look at the bone density of their swing arm compared to their non-swing arm, they'll be something like 20% more dense in their swing arm just because they're using it more. And so you can see from studies like that the more you use a bone or the more you stress a bone, the more dense it'll become. And this brings us to Wolff's Law, which is a really important law to understand when it comes to bone health. And Wolff's Law is really simple. It just states that when you load a bone, it becomes stronger and more resilient. When you unload it, it becomes weaker. And we can look to astronauts in space to give us a perfect example of this. So astronauts that spend 6 months in space will lose in bone density what a typical person loses over a decade. And so what is that?
Probably
20x increase, 6 months, yeah. A 20-fold increase in accelerated bone loss, which is nuts. There's also research to show that if we, are bedbound, even if we're relatively young, we lose bone density. So bones are highly responsive to stress in our environment. Were you going to say something?
Oh, no, no, keep going.
Okay. So the question is, can exercise reverse bone loss or prevent bone loss, prevent further bone loss? And the answer is yes. There was a meta-analysis, a study done that looked at 97 different randomized control trials on exercise and bone density, and they found that resistance training, aerobic exercise, mind-body exercises like Tai Chi, and combinations of different forms of exercise just about all worked to improve bone density in the lower back, in the hip.
Except
swimming. Yeah, which makes total sense if you think about it. It's like if you're in water, suspended, a very little gravity pushing on you, you're floating, you're not stressing your bones, even though you're pulling through the water. So aqua aerobics is probably not enough. I know we hate on aqua aerobics a lot here. I used to be an aqua aerobics instructor.
He did. Funny story. We worked at the gym. This was actually both after we had graduated. He was teaching aqua aerobics, and I would go out there and he would have like quite a few women in their like 80s and 90s in the class. And they would make comments about this cute young guy that was their aqua aerobics instructor. And I think they commented on your butt one time when I was there. I know. I was like, wow, they just have no filter.
Yeah, they used to heckle me in class. I remember this one day, I was playing the same playlist, just like class after class. And this one lady, she's probably 80 years old, "Mix it up, Matt." He yelled at me. I did. It worked.
That's true, but you put like very little effort. It was like 1% effort into your aqua aerobics. You just did it because I think you were asked to do it. You didn't want to do it.
Yeah, I didn't mind though. It's kind of fun, the outside. Anyway, swimming, aqua aerobics, probably not the best for bone density. And the type of exercise does matter. So there was a cool research study that looked at masters athletes. So people between like 35, that's us,
I know. I was thinking that. Like, we're in the master's age group now.
I don't think so. I think it's 55 plus technically. But this study looked at people between 35 and 94. And they looked at sprinters, joggers, walkers, and people that were sedentary, non-athletes. And they found that their bones were dense in that order. Sprinters had more bone density than joggers. Joggers had more bone density than walkers. Walkers had more bone density than sedentary folk. So just what you'd expect. The more force you apply, the more load you apply to the bones, the denser they become. Now, this brings us to my favorite study that I've read recently, the Lift More trial. So this was a study done on 101 postmenopausal women. This was done in 2018, so about 7 years ago. And they had subjects work out for 8 months, twice a week, 30 minutes per session. So not a ton of exercise. And they split them into 2 exercise groups. So one group did what most postmenopausal women do today, which was light stretching, mobility work, walking, some gentle, lightweight dumbbell exercises. And then the intervention group was supervised barbell training. It is literally the program that we do with our clients at Village. They did barbell back squats, barbell deadlifts, and barbell overhead press. And they did it at 80 to 85% of 1 rep max, meaning they lifted heavy. And
I also love it too because they literally said they did it in small groups of 8.
Which is what we do.
In the study, I was like, wow, have they seen our business or what?
It was before we really shifted our model to this. So maybe we saw them. Yeah. Who knows? Anyways, they also did, just for clarity, they did a jumping chin up. So they did like a pull up and then they would let themselves go, 6 inches from the ground. So they're getting that kind of compressive loading. Now, in our program, we do pull ups or rows with the TRX. We also do bar hangs. And we do jumps. And the jump is mainly a bone density exercise and, some plyometric training. So very, very similar to our program. And what they found was at the end of the study, the intervention group, the strength training group, had significant improvements in bone density over the control group. In fact, in the lower back and the hip, the just straight bone mineral density improved positively for the strength training group, and it actually went down in the control group. So even though they were exercising, their bone density still went down over the 8 months of the study. Femoral cortical thickness, which is the thickness of the bone, improved in both groups, but improved by more than double in the strength training group. So the other interesting thing to note was that in the 8 months with 50 plus women in this strength training group, there was only 1 notice of injury, and it was a minor back spasm that kept this woman out for 1 workout. Other than that, no injuries, even though these older women were lifting very heavy weights session after session. And this is kind of what we found in our program. It's like injuries are relatively rare. They do happen. People tweak their back, they get muscle spasms, people's shoulders ache from time to time, but it's especially if you do it right and you do it progressively, meaning you slowly and steadily add load over time, it tends to be fairly safe. And obviously, as evidenced by this and our experience, it's incredibly effective.
And I think the risk, benefit of is strength training worth it?
Right.
The benefit of it is just so high and the risk is so low. And it's not to say you're
it's
never.
Not to say there's no risk.
No, there's not. Yeah, exactly. But it's
just like kids.
Yeah.
It's like if we don't let our kids go out and play and climb trees and go on the monkey bars and hang upside down, they're probably not going to develop the strong, resilient bodies they need to withstand the rigors of life and the mental fortitude to withstand the rigors of life. And I think it's the same thing for the aging adult, obviously a little bit different, and the risks are probably a little bit greater, which is why they need controlled training and controlled stress instead of just climbing trees and doing the monkey bars. But it's still the same principle. It's like we need that stress placed on our bodies when we get older. And it actually probably needs to be more the older we get. I think one of the things I've been learning about aging is that we probably need more protein, more resistance training at higher intensities as we get older, just because our bodies aren't as responsive to the same stimuli.
I would agree with that.
Okay. So we've covered a ton of ground. I want to end by talking about weighted vests because we do get asked that a lot. You want to
Oh
talk
yeah,
about
yeah. I
something
was going to say something else. Like they obviously studied jumping, but I think that's something again that kids naturally just kind of do. They jump like we talked about earlier. But as adults, like I think we become afraid of jumping and like, what if I fall or like, what if I hurt myself? And so, it's like I have heard so many clients that come in and they're, 60 or 70 and they're like, I haven't jumped in 30 years. And so a lot of that hurdle is just like the mental or like jumping off of something like, what if I fall? And so the way that we progress jump is like people start just like with a heel raise and then they go to, just slowly lifting, just coming like a sliver off the floor. And then they go, up to a 6-inch and then a 12-inch and an 18-inch. And so they're doing actually depth jumps. And that is because of bone density. We could jump up onto the box, but we're coming down because we want that force put on their bones. And another thing I've been telling clients recently, especially women that have said, I already have osteopenia or osteoporosis, is that they should just be incorporating it into their routine more than just like the 1 or 2 times a week when they come in to see us, but really every day. And so there was a study that was done and it looked at women over 16 weeks and they did anywhere from 10 to 20, just like not really heavy jumps, but just jumps on the ground 2 times a day. And that also really impacted their femur. Impacted in more ways than one, their bone density in their femur. And so that is such an easy thing to put in. I've told some of them, like, put it as a reminder in your phone to jump every single day, even twice a day. And you can split it up. Like if you haven't been jumping, don't just do 100 jumps. Like we tell people that, like, split it up. Do 5 jumps. And, if you need to be by something to support yourself so you don't feel like you're going to fall, like do that. But it is so good for people. And so, and even make it fun, like do something like hopscotch with your grandkids and start to do that. There's a lot of ways that kids make movement and exercise fun. And we kind of take that play out of movement and we just kind of dread it, and it actually can be really fun. And it feels good when you do it. So I would say, like, you don't have to jump rope or do anything really intense, like just jump on the ground. And that will also really help your bone density. But you're going to talk about weighted vest.
Yeah. I've been asked quite a bit, so I wanted to touch on this. Is wearing a weighted vest good for bone density? And I have not seen any research to show that conclusively just weighted vests alone are enough for increasing bone density. There was a study done that looked at people that underwent a caloric restriction diet, and even if they wore a weighted vest as they went through the caloric restriction program, they still lost about the same amount of bone density as the people not wearing a weighted vest. Now, there are some studies that looked at weighted vest plus plyometric exercises, and not surprisingly, that increased bone density. So resistance training is still the key for boosting bone density, and then just general exercise. And like Nicole talked about, it's probably wise to add in some plyometric work, some jumping.
And then I would say wearing a weighted vest is a really good way also to improve cardiovascular. Just, your body's ability to respond to some extra load. So like I wear mine in the morning when I'm walking. I like to walk up and down my street while my kids they're still sleeping in the mornings. It's usually when I listen to like podcasts. We also, it just is a helpful thing for us to get outside first thing in the morning, getting that vitamin D. But also, that I do think it has like a slight impact just because it is more load and stress on the bones, and it puts a little bit more weight on, but it can't be the only thing. And I think that's the problem with it. And one, I don't think there's enough research to like definitively say like it's often paired with other things. But then 2, I think people want the easy button. Like it's easy to put a weighted vest on and go out for a walk for 30 minutes and say like I did my exercise for the day. So like that's good, but it doesn't substitute for the resistance training and the hard work of like progressive overload. And I think that's where people kind of like, they're trying to hack the system. It's like, how can I do the least amount as possible and like maintain my bone health? And I think it's like, you need to be doing resistance training, heavy resistance training 3 days in a week. You need to be jumping multiple times a week, ideally every day. Sprinting is something we talked about and a little bit, but I think adding in sprints or something that has a little more impact, like if you haven't been running at all, don't just start sprinting. Not a good idea, but really stressing your heart and your bones and your body to help you get out of that like comfort zone, increasing your heart rate, and then also adding in lots of low level movement. And I think the weighted vest is a great thing to add into that, but that can't be the only thing that you do for your bone density.
Love it.
Cool. Now we get to get into my favorite part of the podcast, Q&A. So I feel like I know the answer to this question, but I'm going to ask you anyways. What is your most ridiculous gym fail story?
Ooh. I mean, we've already talked about this in the podcast. I did miss the first spin class where you were there at the gym, running the gym, and I was late. But I don't think that's it.
No, it's not.
That's it.
We have it on video.
Yeah, I mean, I failed on a barbell back squat in a gym and almost took you out.
Yeah.
Was that the story you're thinking of? Yeah, I was barbell back squatting. I'd worked up, this is the most weight I've ever done. I'd worked up to 400 pounds.
I think it was 405.
405, thank you.
You're welcome.
I was doing a squat, trying to do one rep up the squat, and I went down and couldn't get back up.
And we were going to spot you.
Yeah.
And you just flung the barbell back with amazing speed. It just like
I
you
want to
got
get out of there.
You did.
I want to get out of there.
So you failed.
Yeah.
It was funny. And we caught it on camera, which was great.
Yeah. Okay, now my question for you. What is the strangest place you've ever worked out in? You thought I was going to say something else, didn't you, Jams? Didn't you?
Let's see. Oh, man. I'm trying to think. It's a hard one. I mean, strangest? I mean, we have worked out in pretty much anytime we've traveled, we've worked out in kitchens and Airbnbs that we've stayed in. I like one thing that pops in my head, not necessarily strangest, but we brought a TRX when we went to to a wedding for one of our employees way back. And this was also our first time of being away from Cooper when he was 1, and we went to the Bahamas for his wedding. And so we brought a TRX and we worked out on the little patio that it was beautiful, overlooked the ocean. But it was this tiny little space and we made it work. I would say, I mean, we've probably worked out in closet. I feel like we pretty much
in closets?
In closets. Yeah. I was thinking about it. One time I think I was one of the kids was napping in a pack and play in the room and I didn't want to be too far. And you might've been out on a bike ride or something. Yeah. And I was I'm going to be right here. This is the only open space. So maybe a closet, I would say.
Weird.
Yeah, I know. I think I did push-ups, squats. I was I just got to move and do something. And I think one of the other kids was in quiet time in the other room. And so, when you got that little bit of precious time, you'll do whatever it takes to get a workout in.
It's true. I used to work out in my hallway. I lived in an apartment in undergrad and there's 3 rooms in this apartment. There was 6 guys. And there was a hallway, and these other guys, their door was at the end of the hallway. And so I would hook my TRX up to their door, and their door, it opened out. And so the TRX was not pulling against the door jamb, but just against the door and the lock. And I bent the door.
Not surprising.
Yeah. I felt bad about it, but I was determined. I was I'm going to work out. I'm going to work out. So anyways.
Thanks for answering my question too.
You're welcome. Well, this has been the Strength for Life podcast. If you liked it, leave us a 5-star review and leave us a 5-star rating and a review. Or if you're on Spotify, leave us a comment below and let us know what you think. Until next time, I'm Dr. Matt.
And I'm Nicole Klingler.
See you soon.